Down here in that bottom left-hand corner, it says bit.ly/Spark Culver, and that will take you to the entire slide deck for today's presentation. If you realize maybe a third of the way through the presentation, wow, some of these slides are actually interesting. I wish I had a copy of this. It will repeat over and over again throughout the presentation. So you're more than welcome to use that in order to find the entire slide deck. You don't have to pull out your cell phone to take pictures of slides that are specifically interesting to you, because again, the entire presentation is available to you. But for note-taking purposes, if you feel like you want to take a picture every once in a while, it is completely up to you. My name is Melissa Culver. My email address is probably quite easy to figure out here in Clovis Unified, first name, last name, you know how that works. My website address is my name, melissaculver.com. You can find information there if that's interesting to you. I'm also on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Culver Tech Tools. When you, oh, that's 2 slides from now. Here's a little bit of information about me, some of my experience and my background. I will not read that entire slide out to you. That's not usually my presentation style. Sometimes on rare occasions I do, but not all of the slides will I read them out loud. If you're ever curious about grants, programmable robots, virtual reality technology, or 3D printing, I will offer those resources as teaching opportunities in the future for professional development. So if you see any of those emails come through about grant writing or 3D printing, you are more than welcome to pay attention to those emails and then sign up for those trainings when they are available. There's a notification going on in the PA system. Sorry about that. This slide, inside of the slide presentation, the links are active. So you're more than welcome to click on any one of these. You can also find these on my website. You have access to YouTube, my YouTube channel, and my Twitter handle in those spaces as well if you would like to connect. Feel free to go ahead and connect with me there. This presentation is recorded. Give Sherry at least 3, maybe 4 days, business days, if she's really inundated with things, for this presentation to be available on the Curriculum Instruction and Accountability website. Sherry does a fantastic job of posting those there. The web link that will direct you to this is located on the bottom of the screen, and Debbie Parra also sends that out each Friday. In order to find the presentation that's specific to Adobe Spark, you would use the drop-down menu at the top of the presentation in the technology area, and most of those presentations you can find in alphabetical order, so it would populate at the top or near the top of that list. So you're more than welcome to head back and watch this present a second time, or share the information out with a colleague who missed it, wasn't able to attend, and share that with somebody else if you would like to. The outline for the presentation is here. This is not one of the slides that I'll read out loud, so feel free to skim that. That's where I'm going in my presentation, and then I'll move on to the next slide in just a second. And here we are at the next slide. It's natural to ask the question, what is an infographic? If you're unfamiliar with what an infographic is. And basically, if we break that into 2 different parts, we have info or information and graphic being a visual representation that helps whoever's looking at it, the audience, understand a deeper concept. And these are instruments that we see in our daily lives. There are times where in your mailbox, you might have an advertisement. That advertisement is an infographic. When you are thumbing through a magazine and you pause at a particular page that has illustrations and words together to communicate an overall idea, that's another example of an infographic. And in today's presentation, I'm going to show you how you can bring this visual instrument into your classroom or your school site, not only for communication purposes, but also as an assignment inside of the classroom as well. I'll provide you several examples of what that looks like. These are 2 additional examples of how we see infographics available in our daily lives. And in essence, it is a visually appealing communication tool And as teachers, we have some of those higher order thinking skills, or those verbs that we draw to, and we want students to be able to analyze and understand and communicate in complex ways. So here on the screen are just some of those teacherly words that come to my mind when I think of how can I use this in the classroom? And these are strategies that we want students to do. And they typically might do this either in an oral presentation or an essay. And we're just taking it to another level where they're making it more visually appealing, and they're adding imagery to that same idea. So let's look at some examples and some applications. In classroom communication, you can use it as a planning tool. You can explain vocabulary or complex ideas, or notify students that there are holidays or other events that are coming up. You can also invite your entire school to a sports event or an activity of some kind. And these images that you see here are templates that I grabbed from Adobe Spark. These are actual templates that are available that you can adjust or modify as you see fit. Club communication, other school-wide events that are coming along. Communication that is specific to the whole school site in total. Events, communication, ideas, vocabulary, how to get involved, how to participate, how to be engaged, how to help your student. If you're part of yearbook, or maybe you're in charge of designing a yearbook page for your classroom, I know that each individual campus navigates the yearbook differently. And there are some schools where you, the teacher, need to design a yearbook page for your entire class. And if you're unfamiliar with other resources that are available, then Adobe Spark might be a tool that you want to use in order to form that collage and then put that text in place if you wish. And I have one teacher who reached out to me and said, we can't really pass out yearbooks for the kids to like sign it, but we want the students to be able to kind of autograph each other's pages. And so they're actually brainstorming ways right now in order to acquire or accumulate student signatures, and they're sharing them with the teacher so that the teacher can design actual yearbook pages so that the students leave a little message and it's pre-printed. So you don't have it distributing it around. You're not distributing that yearbook to 100 different people, but you still have notes, comments, thoughts, and words and phrases that were handwritten by the other classmates. And this would be a tool that you could do that. The next few slides are specifically designed by students. So the teacher asked the students to accomplish a specific task, and these are models or samples of what other students have done. You can utilize it in the science classroom. You can utilize it in engineering, foreign language, metaphor, parts of speech, digital citizenship, vocabulary associated with digital citizenship. I'm pausing without speaking because I'm assuming that your eyes are scanning the screen to kind of digest all of that information. And then you, the teacher, if you're designing a cover for either a slide deck or an actual packet of some kind that needs to be distributed, or the cover of a video that you're working on, then there are ways that you, the teacher, can then support the content that you're teaching in a visually appealing fashion. And you can use this in a variety of different ways as well. I have 9 sample themes on this slide, and then I have 9 additional sample themes on the next slide. And then in just a little bit, I'll model how the software actually works. Here's that next slide. in your own mind at this point, you're probably brainstorming strategies that you can use based on content that you're teaching, and you're beginning to think how you can use it in the classroom. And those are good notes, good thoughts to have at this juncture and at this process. So the next question is, how do we log into the software? So the next few slides, I'm going to explain how the students log in and how the teachers log in, because these are two slightly different strategies. When the students log in, they're going to head to Clever. Once they're in Clever, they're going to scoot down the screen about a third of the way down, and then they're going to locate the Adobe Spark button located right about here. And just at the bottom right of that Adobe Spark app icon, there's a question mark. When you take your mouse over to the question mark and you hover on top of the question mark, this pop-up will appear for the students. So in that scaffolding phase where you're explaining to the students how this works, I have a video to support that. I'll show that to you a little bit later in the presentation. But in order to support that student phase of learning where the students are asking the question, how do I get on? How do I log in? You can direct them to this question mark right here, because if they protest later and they're like, oh, I tried it for homework and I couldn't get in, I couldn't figure it out, then you can remind them that the question mark right there is going to give them the tools they need in order to successfully log in. So the sample right here says Mickey Mouse 001 at my.cusd.com, and the students would just apply their own username to the beginning of that email strand. So Jamie Smith 001 at my.cusd.com, for example, could be a student login. So this alerts the students the process that they need in order to log in successfully. After the students have actually officially clicked on the app, then I'm just going to keep talking even though the PA system is running. So over on the right hand side here in Adobe Spark, it says log in with student account. And I mentioned to the students there's a graduation hat for students who gravitate to symbols a little bit faster to letters. They're going to look for that graduation hat. Go ahead and click over there on the right hand side where it says log in with student account. And then after that happens, the login page is going to change. It'll look like this. I have obviously a very large yellow box. The students aren't going to see a large yellow box, but in this region, that's where the students would sign in, and then they would click the continue button, and then from the continue button, they would get in. For the teachers, it's not too terribly different, but it is slightly different. So teachers are still going to go over to Clever. After they're in Clever, you're going to scoot down the screen just a little bit to find Adobe Spark. You don't have special instructions in the question mark. Unfortunately, only the students do. So you'll have to write this down or remember it somehow. You also are going to come over to the right-hand side where you see the graduation hat. You're going to log in with a school account. And then this is where it's different. You're going to use the long form of your CUSD email at clovisusd.k12.ca.us. in that same login location where the students are signing in. So you're using that same space, but you're using the long form of your email. And then you're going to click that blue continue button in order to move on. And because you're an educator, Adobe Spark recognizes that you're an educator. And then over on the right-hand side, it says company or school account. You would choose that area right there. You would click one time, and then that would get you in. Once you're in, it's going to look similar to this. I can't promise you it's always going to look like this. About every 6 to 8 months, Adobe Spark makes adjustments and things change. As with all online resources, as with all technology, things upgrade and they change. They look a little bit different over time. In the course of this lesson, I'm going to walk you through each of the different buttons that you see available to you here, and I'm going to model what it looks like to create your own JPEG file, your own product or sample. So along the home area of the screen, and I classify it as home because in order to get back here, you would click on the actual button that says home on the left. I'm going to start by highlighting or talking about some of these buttons along the left. If you have existing projects that you've been working on, you can easily get to them over here on the left where it says projects. If you navigate away from something and you need to get back home, the home button is also an option. And just above the gold arrow on the left, there is a plus symbol. and you can easily start a brand new project just by clicking on the plus symbol. In my opinion, brands might not be very essential for us. We're not selling a product. We don't need to brand it, but over there in that area, you can find information about brands, like a brand or a logo. Over here on the right-hand side, it says View All. After you click on View All, the screen is actually going to change significantly, and it will look more like this. If this space is a little bit overwhelming or confusing or not helpful for you, you don't ever have to come into this space, but I do want to provide some clarity in this area. Adobe Spark allows you to work with graphics, web pages, and videos. For today's presentation, I'm only going to focus on the graphics component. I'm not going to head over into web pages too much or videos. I do have my own video that I designed on YouTube that's available to you in my presentation later. So if you're curious about that, then that might satisfy some of those questions that you might have. The reason why I paused just a little bit on this page is because the second golden arrow down on the bottom is pointing underneath where it says flyer. And you can see in the light gray wording how it identifies what type of item you are going to adjust or modify by clicking on that specifically. So if you don't want, let me head back one. I was trying to draw on the screen to bring clarity to it. And one more. So if you don't specifically want to work with a video or a web page, I usually ask my students, I tell them rather, in this specific, and I didn't mean to zoom in. I'll tap the screen a second time. There we go. And then I'll just not bother trying to circle that. You're capable of seeing it right there. So I just, at that point, ask my students to work specifically with a graphic and not with the other ones, because I don't have that for that specific assignment with the students that I work with. I don't need them to work on those other details. Down on the bottom, over on the right, where the arrow is pointing, it says View All Projects. And because I've been here already before, each of the projects that I've worked on before begin to accumulate in this area. So if you ever want to go back and provide more detail or more clarity, you're not finished with something, you can easily come back to that item that's been saved, and then you can add more style or change it up in any way that you would like to. And likewise with the students, they don't have to finish this project in one sitting. They can easily come back to it day after day over the course of 2 or 3 or 4 days, and then add to it and then turn it in on a later date. It's not going to magically disappear. Unfortunately, disappear on them. It's going to be available at a later date. So I've clicked right here on the My Projects, and then they come in a list form so that you can easily locate what it is that you're looking for. At the top of this screen, over on the left, it indicates My Projects, Shared with You, and Recent. And in the presentation, I'm also going to talk about how these projects can be collaborative in nature. So if you want 2 students to work on the same project together, or 3 students to work on the same project together, they should be able to do that. I've had a student share work with me where I can step in and make adjustments to their project if needed. So if you do have 2 or 3 students who are struggling miserably, oh, I just can't figure this out. Well, the 2 of you can collaborate together at the same time if needed on that project, and then you can provide them the support that they need in order to feel successful. And you are alerted on the screen that specific projects are shared by this particular symbol right here. That lets you know if it's being shared with somebody else or it's being shared with you. This isn't extraordinarily new, but it's somewhat new, the creating for the classroom. And in my opinion, this revolutionized what Adobe can do in the classroom. Previously, we were very limited on the number of templates that the students had to work with. And now, in the snap of a finger, you can provide excellent communication to parents, to students, to it just revolutionizes what we can do as a school site, not just in the classroom, because so many of these templates are perfect for letting our community know that some events are coming up and we would love to invite them to this event or activity. On the right-hand side, the arrow is pointing to where it says explore more templates. By clicking right there on the right, it takes you to the template area. The template area has over 35,000 templates to choose from. You can use that search space in order to search for specific words. And just underneath it, where my other arrow is pointing, there are a few words that they assume you might want to search for quickly, and those are also available to you in that area. When you begin typing in there, it may auto predict some of those words it assumes you might use, or it also provides you with an opportunity to see a category, a list of words that are searched for frequently in this space. And then it narrows it down so you're not looking at 35,000. You might only be looking at 200, or you might be looking at 50 that meet the needs of whatever category it is that you have chosen to search for. So those are available to you here. And because I searched for science, this page is showing you what a sample search query would look like. And so all of these had science in them to some degree. So it just lets you know that filtering can save you time, and it's an efficient search strategy. So what does it look like to actually edit a template? The next series of slides will walk through what it is that I'm going to do live. And I usually don't teach live because sometimes I'm brokenhearted when it goes sour and things don't work well for me. I like to rely on my slides because I know that they're going to perform the way that I want them to. So I clicked just a second ago. I brought that tab over and now I don't see it. Here we go. So give me a thumbs up if you can see this. You should be able to see Clever on your screen. Marvelous. The green box that shows that I'm sharing my screen disappeared, so I don't have that layer of comfort of knowing that I'm sharing it. So here I am in Clever. When you scoot down Clever, Adobe Spark is here, like I mentioned earlier. I've already signed into the program. That saves me over a minute or so of having to type that in live in front of you. When I head in here, all the things that I mentioned are available live on the screen. I mentioned creating for the classroom down here. I already talked about your recent projects that are available here. One thing that I didn't highlight specifically is these items right here. You can click on any one of these in order to start a project that is identified here. And I already talked about that view all component over here. I am going to click right here in order, actually it's a sample, so it's the one just to the right of it. I'm going to click here so that I can adjust this specific item here. And I'm going to come up here. So this is basically a template. It has 3 regions to work with. I have one region on the left. I have one space right over here. And then I also have a space down here. So it's broken up into 3 areas. If you begin working on a template and it really only has one main area, it only has one picture, or you're working on a project that has 3 and you wish that it had more, I'm going to come over to this area and I'm going to try to go sequentially so that I don't forget anything. I'll explain to you how you can easily modify that template so that it has more or fewer spaces to work with. I'm going to gravitate to the right. I'm going to scoot all the way down and talk about each of these. I'm going to scoot over to the left, and then I'm going to head all the way down here and talk about those. So I'm going to start with colors over here on the right. When you click colors on the right, there are several color designs to choose from, and you can override these pre-done color palettes to make it any color palette that you would like. It may save you time just to choose one of these if you're short on time, if you want your students to finish a project in 5 days. It's kind of nice to have these palettes that are ready to go. When you click on one of these palettes, it's going to take these color strategies and immediately apply it to your project. You have a button on the left that allows you to change any of the colors in that color palette. You also have a shuffle button on the right that's going to shuffle where each color appears in the project. So when I click shuffle, it will cycle through only the colors in this palette, but we'll move them from one location to a different location. So maybe that's the overall color palette I want to work with, but I want those to take on a different position or shape. Likewise, if I scoot up to a different one, that very same process would happen all over again. I could override any color in this palette to a color of my choosing, or I can simply, I'm trying to click away, there we go. Or I can simply choose that shuffle button where it's going to shuffle the colors that are in that palette into my project over here on the right. So that's what colors represents. I'm going to click the little X located right over here. I'm going to take my mouse and spin it a few times. And I'm going to click that little X, and then the color area has now disappeared. So I'm not working with the color area. I'm going to move down to animation. Animation may or may not be important to you. If you use Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or Remind as communication tools for families, and you feel like having something that has an animated quality to it might grab their attention, you're more than welcome to apply any of the animation tools that you see in here. The animation, I believe, mostly applies to the text. And so the text will kind of fade in slowly, or it can apply dynamically. It'll shoot in or fly in, or it'll have like a typewriter feel to it. So if you feel like the animation is important to you, you can scoot through and click on any one of those strategies and then apply that, and then export that to Instagram. And I'm going to talk about exporting to Instagram a little bit later. I'm going to talk about downloading. That's a little bit later on in my process. I'm going to come up here and click none because it does not make me happy right now to have the animation on there. It's going to slow things down a little bit. And then I'm going to choose the X over here. Background, in my opinion, I would have labeled this layout and not background. And this is why. Over here on the left, it says backgrounds, and we're going to talk about backgrounds later. In my opinion, layout is a better word to use to describe what they want to happen over here. I'm going to start with the border. When I slide this over to the left or over to the right, I instantly have a border applied to the items in my project. The cell is very similar to border. It's going to apply differently depending on the project that you're working on. Basically just allows a buffer in that space. So if that is a style that you want to apply to your project, then that's available to you. And then as I scoot down over here, this is where I have the ability to choose if I want more images. So see how this has one, I'm going to scoot my mouse here repeatedly. 1, 2, 3, 4. This has 4 cells where my project only has 3. If I wanted to, I could click on this 4-cell template, and now I have 4 different boxes to choose from. So you as the teacher, if you want the students to write a small paragraph in one cell and have a title in another, and you want 2 pictures, a 4-cell layout might be helpful for your students because you want more than just 3 items. You also have the shuffle button here. The shuffle button is going to move those items around and around so that you can see what it looks like visually in different spaces. I'm also going to model the undo button. So up here where the undo and the redo buttons are located, if I have made a selection and I really don't like that and I want to go back to something that I previously had, the undo button is only available during that session. If I save and close out and then come back, much like a Word document or many other online resources, that undo button is no longer going to work. It only applies to that session. I'm going to click on resize over here. If you didn't resize your template before you got started and you realized, oh, you know what? I don't want this to be for Instagram. I want this to be for Pinterest or something else. Or I want it to be 8.5 by 11 because I want to be able to print it out well, or I want it to be 5 by 7. You can at any point during the design process go in and change the size of that project. Obviously, at this point, if I were to move to letter, I am changing from a square to a rectangle. So it may distort my project, and then I might need to make some adjustments so that it doesn't look as awkward. I'm going to close Resize. I'm going to click the undo button one time, and then I'm going to come down here to design. When I click on design, this gives me the ability to apply design characteristics that are available over here in the variations instantly to my project. If I click on this one right here, the lettering, style, color, and characteristics will go from this project over to my project over here. So now the background is black, both font styles changed, my color theme adjusted. So as you're moving through, you don't have to spend 12 minutes making massive adjustments in order for the overall design strategy to change. You can simply come down to design to make some of those adjustments. I'm going to click design over here one time in order for that to disappear. You can make this disappear one of two ways. Most of the time I've been coming up to the X in order for it to disappear. In order for it to disappear, you can actually click on that item in order for it to disappear. I've already modeled the buttons on the top. I'm going to come down to the bottom. If at any point you need to zoom into your project to see whether or not you like it, for example, you like it from that far away perspective, but if you were to zoom in and then you realized, oh, it's not lining up very well, I need to adjust it. You do have those features at the bottom of the screen, so you can zoom in or zoom out as needed. I'm going to scoot all the way over here to the left. When I scoot over to the left, you can switch templates at any point. If you have decided that you don't like this template and there was another one that you wanted to adjust to, you don't have to go all the way back to that home screen in order to adjust to that alternative template. You can do that right here from this area. I'm going to click, and up here, I kind of thought it was self-explanatory, but I'll pause to mention it anyway. You can use filtering strategies right here in this space in order to find a template that works well for you. I'm going to go ahead and click right here on the X. Now I'm going to move over to text. If you only have, for example, if I were to click right here on frog, and then I use delete or backspace on my computer, frog just disappeared. I can click the undo button in order to bring frog back. The other option is I can either click add your text right here, or I can scoot down to a variety of different font strategies that are over here, and I can choose one of these instead. So if a template is fantastic, but it doesn't have a space for a small paragraph, students would come over to this area and click a button in order to form that small paragraph or those phrases or that summary, etc. I'm going to click the X. I'm going to click undo so that my text comes back. Now, a natural question is, wow, that's great. I really don't like those pictures. It doesn't apply to my project. How do my students go in and change pictures? The first strategy that I usually gravitate to is click on the picture you want to change or get rid of. And when that happens, there's a menu over here that's going to help you with style strategies. If you want to zoom in or zoom out of that picture, if you want to take it from black and white or bring it over to normal, those are over here. You can also click the replace button over here. It seems a little bit visually overwhelming because I clicked on the right and now there's activity on the left, but yes, that is correct. So step number one, I clicked on the item. Step number two, I clicked replace over on the right. Step number three, I'm going to swing all the way over to the left. Again, we have that filtering strategy or that search box on the left. I'm going to type giraffe. So it's a completely different category. And when I do that, there are, I don't want to say thousands. It all just depends on what you're looking for. If you are a science teacher and you are looking for cellular structures or something complex about the body, heart, mind, brain, lung, etc., you might not find as many of those resources on here. But when it comes to a very common animal like a giraffe, you might find hundreds or even thousands of pictures to choose from. It depends on the item that you're looking for. These are free. They don't cost anything. I'm going to click one time right here on the giraffe. It might take 10, 15 seconds in order for my picture to be replaced with the giraffe. I can grab that picture and slide down. You'll notice how the image is not moving on my template. It's only moving in that frame. So it's not bumping into cell number 2. It's not bumping into cell number 3. I'm just simply grabbing on that picture and then I'm able to scoot up and down so that I can see exactly what I want in that specific frame. If I've changed my mind and I really don't like that one and I want a different one, I can easily click on something from the gallery on the left, and then that image will scoot into that spot. Oh, just kidding. It's going to pop on top. Okay, let me rephrase that and start over. I'm going to click on what I don't want. I'm going to click delete one time. I'm now going to click on the frame itself in order to override what's in the frame. When I click replace over here on the right, I can then scoot over to the left. I can find whatever image I want to put inside of that box or that space. And then it's going to go through the process of choosing that alternative item for that space. Likewise, if I wanted a different set of leaves to occur in this space, or maybe I wanted some landscape, or I wanted a river, or some type of environmental picture over here, or I can even be more specific and then choose Africa. Hopefully I spelled it correctly. I wasn't looking at my keyboard. Oh, okay. So let me click right here because I want to change this. I want to replace it. So I'm going to choose the word replace over here. Unfortunately, I lost my entire search query over there. And I'm going to type that up all over again. I'm going to scoot down for something. Oh, here we go. I'm going to click one time. I'll wait about 15 seconds. And then those rainforest leaves have now been replaced. And we see this dry, deserty earth. Since the picture of the giraffe does not correspond well with the word frog, how do we change the word frog? When I double click on the word frog, the screen in front of me is going to completely change. And now I have an editing space. I'm going to type giraffe in here. Giraffe. I do that more for me, not for you. I'm sure you know how to spell it. I just want to type it correctly in front of an audience. I'm going to click the word done, and then you'll notice how the word giraffe has now been, the word frog is now replaced with the word giraffe. I'm going to click on the word giraffe one time, and you'll notice how there is a circle down in the corner. When I grab on that circle, it allows me to readjust giraffe. I can scoot it over to wherever I want. I have 4 corner boxes that allows me to make it thinner or larger or wider. I do have many style strategies to apply to the text. You'll notice when I click on the text that I have this editing tool that shows up over here on the right. I can change the color by clicking right here where it says text color. It only says text color when I'm on top of it. So I'm going to scoot over here and then click. And then I can override the black color with a different color. I also can come just adjacent to this black box, click inside this area where I now can choose a different font. It's hard for me to say exactly how many different fonts there are. I don't know, 90? I'm just going to throw out a random number. I'm not really going to count all of them. I'm going to guess that you have over 90 fonts to choose from. And then scooting over to the right from there, there is a number. And if I wanted to, I could overwrite the number that I've been illuminated with blue, and I can type in a specific number here to change the size. It says 172.1. So if I do 175, which is a little bit larger than that, the word giraffe just jumped microscopically, just a little bit larger than it was a second ago. In addition to this, I can click on shape, shadow, or outline. I can choose left, center, or right justification. I can also change the overall shape of the fonts if I want to. Please don't feel like you need to be an expert in any of this when you give the assignments to your students. Students are usually fearless. They jump in. They're not terrified about making mistakes. They're going to figure it out way more than you will, and they're going to teach you how to use it. So don't feel like you have to be an expert on this. I'm just giving you an overview so you feel comfortable about using this resource. So if I want a shape, I can choose shape. If I don't want a shape, I can take that off. If I want a shadow, I can choose the color of the shadow. All right. You get the point. The text can change, lots of strategies. I think that's sufficient enough. Down here on the bottom, this button usually, oh, this is what it's doing. Right here, I'm going to spin my mouse about 3 more times, and then this little magic wand. Every time you click the magic wand, you'll notice how giraffe changes. I'm going to click it again, it changed again. I'm going to click it again, it changed again. So if your students or you as the designer are a little bit fatigued with all of these choices, you can just come down to this magic wand and then keep clicking it until it's something that you like has appeared. Make some final adjustments if you want to, change the color if you choose, center it as you see fit, and voila. Now, a few of you might be asking, the paragraph down on the bottom right doesn't really help the whole giraffe narrative very well. So how do we fix that? So if you come over here and you apply the same strategy that we just did, you can double click on here, and then you can come into this space and then change that text as needed. I am not going to change this right now. I'm just going to choose cancel. I think I've sufficiently explained some of those key introductory details of what font looks like, so I won't keep doing that. I'm going to click, and then I will come back to the photo area just to let you know that the free photos, this free photo area is what I was originally working with, but you can upload photos of your own from your computer. So when I was talking about yearbook earlier or specific events related to your school, you can upload your own pictures from your computer into this space. I cannot promise you that it's going to connect with Google Drive. Earlier today, I was able to click right here, and then there are like 7 other buttons. I approve, allow, yes, Google Drive and Adobe Spark can work with one another. I give permissions, etc. For the teachers, I know it's going to work, but I can't promise you for the students that it will. And so hopefully the students can use things from Google Drive if they wish to. That is an option. And for example, earlier today when I was talking about science strategies, so like the brain, heart, etc., if I'll explain it a little bit more. I'm trying to explain it. It's in my presentation later, but let's say I'm just going to type in technology, enter, and then when I do that, I'm going to click on images. So some of your students are old enough. This is a strategy they work with already. So I typed in technology, and then instead of all at the top, I scooted over to where it says images. In addition to images, if students are going to download images from the internet, my suggestion, please and thank you, is under the usage rights, just make sure that they have permission to use them. That's my recommendation. And then I'm not going to do a great job of walking through these steps slowly, but I do have slides for you in my presentation. So if you want to walk your students through this process, you do have teaching slides. So if a student wants to have this picture in their in the Adobe Spark experience, you can right click on an image followed by save image as. Because that image is now on your computer, the student can upload a picture because they downloaded it from the internet, as long as they have permission to do that. And then in this space, you would choose that image of the heart, the brain, the intestine, whatever, a molecular structure, whatever that image is, Benjamin Franklin, Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, whoever it is that they're doing an autobiographical sketch on, now they have the images they need in order to complete the task that you've asked them to. So more than one way to use images. The other item that I'm going to mention is icons. Icons are basically, I'll do insect, for example. And it's kind of like a stamp, if you will, a little bit less than a sticker, more like a stamp. And when you use this resource, you can also choose the color of it. So I clicked one time and it's green on green, so it's hard to see. And when I scoot it up, you also have the power of changing that color located over here on that right-hand side. So a color that's going to work well for you based on the project that you're doing, then you can have that here. If you are ever working with a graphic design resource and something gets stuck behind something, this little stack right here helps you determine what is on top. So if I moved this over here, not the best example of the world in the world, but if something is tucked behind it and you can't see it, this stacking tool allows you to determine if you want something to go behind or in front of something. So whatever special item that you've added to the project does not get lost. All right. So the icons are, I'm going to click one time and then I'm going to use delete or backspace on my computer. You can do that at any point with whatever you're working on. I'm going to move away from icons and then click on design accents. And these are more like stickers, slightly different from a stamp. A stamp is usually one singular color or a variant depending on your ink pad. But your stickers, if you will, are a little bit more vivid. They have maybe more detail and they are slightly different. I'm going to click on this little paper clip right here. I'll wait a few seconds. It will scoot in. You don't have to leave it that size. I'm going to grab the corner. I'm going to slide in. I'm going to scoot up, and this little circle right here allows me to spin it around. So if I want it to look like it was tucked into my notebook, then I can stick it up there and it looks like it was tucked into my notebook. If you change your mind and you're like, I don't want it anymore, go ahead and click one time and then use delete or backspace, just like I mentioned so many other things. I'm now going to scoot over here to backgrounds. Backgrounds has a persnickety quality to it. Remember when I was clicking on the pictures earlier, if I didn't click on that frame, then it was going to drop the back. It was going to drop that image on the top. Same thing with the backgrounds. If I click right here, it's just going to drop a rectangle of whatever that background is into that space, into the space in total. If I want it to override a cell, I must click on that space to begin with, and then choose image, come over to backgrounds, and then choose the background. And then the background will now override that space. So the sequence of my clicking is going to determine my outcome. I need to make sure that I'm letting the computer know where I want that to go in order for it to function properly. I'm not going to head down to logos. I'm not going to head over to libraries. Over here on the right, where I have that background that's scooted in, again, you can zoom in or zoom out. You can twist it to the left or to the right if needed. You can rotate it or flip it if needed. You can add coloring filters or a blur. So for example, with this cracked earth image, I was hoping that I would have the capacity to blur. And when I tick the little blur down here on the bottom, I can determine the intensity of that blur. Whoa, Melissa, you went too fast. All right, I clicked right here on the picture. On the right-hand side, that's where the image editor appeared. I scooted down to the bottom to see things that I couldn't originally see on the screen. I ticked the box on the bottom right next to the word blur. I scooted down the screen even more, and then I have this intensity slider right here that allows me to determine the intensity of the blur for that specific image. All right. Now I am going to no. I can model these next few things here before I get to those last slides that I'm working with. And I know I only have 10 minutes left in my presentation. I'm going to scoot all the way up to the left because let's pretend I'm a student and I'm ready to turn this in, even though I didn't adjust the little paragraph over here like I was mentioning. I'm going to scoot all the way over here to the left. And right here where it says sample, I'm going to erase all the text in there. And then inside that specific space, my recommendation is have the students put their own name in that space. And then if you want them to specify the specific assignment, that would be lovely, because my suggestion is that they turn these in via Google Classroom. And when they turn this in via Google Classroom, it's going to be extraordinarily helpful in order to see the student names in there. Otherwise, it's just going to be 40 students who have turned in an assignment, and that name is going to be my post for every single one of those. So my recommendation is, my name's Melissa, so I'll put Melissa in there. And then I'm going to add giraffe to the end of it. And then I'm going to press enter on my keyboard, and it's going to change the name. Overall, Adobe Spark does a decent job of saving the content. I have no problem with you reminding the students periodically to go in and then just kind of, you know what, click in the box up there and then press enter. And then it may force it to save if it has forgotten to save, because sometimes it does go haywire, it goes sour and it loses things. So if a child says, I worked for an hour and a half on it and I totally lost it, my recommendation is give the child grace, because it probably did go sour. All things, no matter how awesome it is, Google goes sour every once in a while. Zoom goes sour every once in a while. So the next step over here is the download button. I recommend the top two. I don't know if PDF works. I haven't tried it in a while. I don't want it to take 5 minutes and then I have to apologize that it's not working well. So I'm not going to test it out live in front of you. But I do know that JPEG and PNG work. And then when you click download, it will download to your computer. Melissa, what's the difference? If there's anything that's hollowed out or see-through, I would I have to click the allow button, which is good that it popped up here, because if any student has a problem, and just have them visually scan to see if there's an alert of some kind asking for permission to do that. If there's anything hollowed out or see-through, my recommendation is a PNG. Otherwise, a JPEG is going to work all the time. That's my recommendation. And I'm going to scoot down to the screen. Oh, and it said error. So either it came through or it didn't. It usually does. This is another reason why I try not to teach live, because things go sour sometimes. All right, I need to fast forward through my slides in order to take us to that next section. And let me scoot through those. I modeled the toolbar strategies on the left and the right. I named each one of them. I was able to escort you through each of those strategies. I modeled the undo button and the zoom in. Now I'm at the collaboration and organization phase. If your students are collaborating with one another, they've had a chance to share it. Becky shared it with James, for example. The button on the top right, just next to the download button, would give the students the ability to share that work with each other or with you. If they're sharing it with you, it needs to be the long form of your email. If students are sharing it with each other, it needs to be the full email address in order for those resources to be shared well. Beyond that, there are tools for organization. So earlier, when I opened up that sample project, I was hovering on top of it, so the ... appeared. When you click on the ... you have several options to choose from. For mine, I went directly into it. I didn't need to make any adjustments. But if this is a tool that you work in a lot, or the students work in a lot, you can organize these in folders. Adobe Spark allows you to design folders so that your work can get readjusted. I'm not going to name all those out loud. I'll let you just read them yourself, and then I'm going to scoot on to the next screen. This is the process of moving it. You can design a folder and then create that folder if needed, and then tuck those resources into a strategy that organizes well. I have tried working with Publish directly from a computer, and I have not found success. I'm not promising you that it's always going to function this way. Maybe they're going to fix it, but don't be discouraged if that button doesn't work very well. And I'm talking about the share strategy on the right. This did not work for me last week, but it did work for me this week when I tried to sync. So they may be working out the kinks right now. I can't make any promises if either of those work, but just don't get discouraged, please, and thank you if those two buttons do not work well for you. Exporting and uploading, I already mentioned the idea of renaming it. I modeled that for you. I clicked the download button already. I mentioned how it's supposed to appear down on that bottom left. And then here's the strategy for getting it into Google Classroom. Yes, this is available on Android and Apple devices. I'll mention that a little bit later. So that is an option for students if they choose to use that resource. But let's pretend that they're on a computer. You would get into the teacher's Google Classroom, click on the assignment. You would use the add button located over here on the right. From that point, you would choose a file because you're bringing in that file from your computer. After the student has, I was skipping ahead in my thoughts, so sorry, that would be the next slide. The students actually can drag the file over to this space over here, over to the upload window, and then it will directly upload immediately from that space. Obviously, not all students have the same computer, so it's not going to work on every style or type of computer, but you can drag and drop from that lower tray. The other option is that the students can browse through the computer in order to find that specific file in order to upload it to Google Classroom. And then I was getting ahead of myself. I thought this slide was next. At this point, the students would verify that the file loaded properly, and then the students from here would use the turn in button in order to turn in that file. Devices, I mentioned it previously, but not very well. The Android, both Android and Apple offer Adobe Spark as an app. As a teacher, I've already used it, and my son has had an opportunity to use it. He's taking a photography class. So by logging in with our CUSD credentials, we do have access to these resources on devices. And whatever was happening on your desktop is available on that personal device as well. So you can move from one device to the other seamlessly if you want to continue working on a project or need to make any adjustments or even add a new one. So across each of those platforms, that app is available. For example, if you post site-related material to your school, Facebook, Twitter, Reminder, Instagram, then you could use those resources in that space easily. Lesson plan tools. I only have a few more slides. I'm almost done. Lesson details. Make sure that you provide your students with clarifying information so that they're not confused about the expectations. Some of the standard things you would do on a normal assignment would apply as well. I won't read that slide out to you. I do have a student teaching video. Unfortunately, my video came out a few weeks before Adobe Spark did a major overhaul on their platform. Doesn't that always happen? So some of the characteristics that are in my video will completely and totally apply. You can share this with your students, either show it in class or provide it as a homework tool, providing your students with the support that they need to be successful in this resource. I'm not teaching you anything about Adobe Spark today. If you are curious about Adobe Spark, the video link for Adobe Spark is available in the presentation that I provided to you. So you could head over there and watch that if you wanted to. When it comes to uploading images from the internet, I do have an entire slide deck that you can use as a teaching tool to help your students. I do not have time in my presentation today to go through all of those slides, but that is a resource for you. You can use in the classroom if you need to help your students. I will now pause in my presentation to make sure that I answer any questions. I gave you a lot of information in a short period of time. And as always, I want to make sure that I thank you for taking time out of your day for joining me for today's session. And feel free to provide feedback either in email, in chat, or unmute yourself and then share your thoughts. So thank you again for coming.